You can start sharing your screen now. Oh, we have Chinese.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second in the College Information Week. My name's Sarah Seaborg. I am a counselor in the district with the early college high school, and I'll be facilitating tonight's evening. Please take a minute and read the information on the screen. This presentation will be conducted in more than one language. And so if you would like a language other than English, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window and choose the language you wish to hear. If you choose a language other than English, you will have the option to listen only to your language or listen to your language and English at a lower volume. If you wish to mute English, click the globe icon and select Mute Original Audio. We ask that all participants stay muted so that the language interpretation can be conducted smoothly. So I'll give us just a minute to take care of this. And if you are wishing to view this in English, we ask that you do so via YouTube, and I will share this link in the chat momentarily. But let's go ahead and go back to the previous slide for that additional information. All right. With that, I will turn it over to Corey Graves. Corey is an admissions advisor at Oregon State and will be giving tonight's presentation on the Oregon Public Universities. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and myself or Corey will address them as we're going through the presentation. There will be some natural pauses in the presentation, at which time we'll address questions that come up.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Like she said, my name is Corey Graves. I am the Portland-based Regional Admissions Advisor at Oregon State. So today I will be doing a really broad overview of four-year public universities. I am going to mostly cover the universities that are within the state of Oregon, and then I will give a very brief overview of admissions. Hopefully we have enough time to kind of get your questions answered. If not, again, please put those in the chat. I am going to also try to put a link into the chat. I'm hoping that worked. If you are interested in Oregon State, again, that's where I work, please fill out this registration form. If you're not really interested in Oregon State, that's totally okay. Don't worry about it. You don't have to fill it out. But if you are, we want to know that you're interested. Throughout this presentation, there is English, there are other interpretations. So I will be taking some pauses so that we can allow our interpreters to finish up. So let's go ahead and get started. Before I dive into the Oregon Public Universities, I just wanted to quickly cover public versus private. I think it's important to know the differences, and there is, I believe, another presentation on private universities. So if you are interested, make sure that you're logging on for that later. But the biggest difference between the two is funding. So private universities are typically funded by endowments, donors, and student tuition. So because of that student tuition, it tends to be higher. However, private universities do offer a lot of scholarships and financial aid packages in order to help bring that cost down. Because of the way that they are funded, there's usually not a difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition. So it'll be one tuition cost per student. It doesn't matter if you're from that same state or not. And that's different with public universities. So with public, those are funded via the state or the federal government. So that tuition will be lower. Really, your money will go farther. You'll have a little bit more bang for your buck, better return on investment. And there is a difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition. So that is one of those biggest differences in terms of academics, programs, clubs, and organizations. They all have different options. They vary, but with private schools, they may be more specialized, and private schools are allowed to be religious-based and religious affiliated, where public universities are non-denominational. So those are kind of some of those big differences. It is really, really a broad overview. So again, if you have questions, you can put those in the chat. I'm going to take another pause before I move forward. So moving on to our Oregon universities, we have 8 public ones within the state. You can see all of them on this slide, and I will be going through each and every one of them for a very brief overview. But to see them on a map, Oregon has a lot of options and the ability for you to find the right fit for you. Really, you can see all of them here. The only thing I would say is that Oregon Tech does have a second campus in our Portland metro area in Wilsonville. So that would be in between Portland State and Western Oregon. So you could kind of pop it in there, and then you would really have everything on this map. Lots of options between the Portland area, Southern Oregon, Central Oregon, and even Eastern Oregon. So really spread out all across the state. Moving on, we're going to start with Eastern Oregon. It is one of the smallest universities within the state with 1,600 students on their campus. Eastern Oregon really is known for a lot of their online programs. They have great programs online. They are nationally ranked in those, but they also started as a school for education. So elementary education is one of their notable majors. I think one of the best parts about Eastern is their location, because if you like being outdoors, there's a lot of different opportunities for you to get off campus and get outside. Pay attention to these application deadlines as I go through. If you find a school that you're interested in, please pay attention to what those are, write them down, because they will differ for every university. Oregon Institute of Technology, or Oregon Tech, is next. Main campus is in Klamath Falls, which is in Southern Oregon. But like I just previously mentioned, they also have a campus in Wilsonville, Portland metro area, which is really small. Only about 900 students are on that campus. And Oregon Tech's overall student population is around 5,300 students. Lots of major opportunities, engineering, a lot of health sciences. If you are interested in medical imaging like x-rays, that is going to be the school to go to. They're the only one in Oregon that offers it. I actually have previously worked for this university, so if you do have questions about them, please let me know. I can probably answer them for you. And again, even some different application deadlines. So make sure you're paying attention to that. But again, just another one of our smaller universities that we have within the state. Moving on to Oregon State University, the school I'm here and work for, and also my alma mater. I'm an Oregon State alumna. Our main campus is in Corvallis, about an hour-and-a-half south of Portland. We are the largest university within the state of Oregon, and also receive a lot of research funding because we have all 4 federal research grants. So that's something that really sets us apart from a lot of other universities, even in the nation. We have engineering. Our College of Forestry is nationally and internationally ranked. Marine biology is a great program for students that are interested because we have a facility in Newport as well. So it really giving you a larger campus, but in a little bit of a rural setting. Again, about 30,000 students, but undergraduate on campus is going to be more about 25,000. In terms of Oregon State Cascades, that is our branch campus in Bend. So it's about 2.5-hour drive between the 2 campuses. Small campus, about 1,300 students there, and really a great place if you like to be outdoors or you still want to be a part of Oregon State, just with that smaller student community. To be outside, it's right at the bottom of Mount Bachelor. There's Smith Rock for rock climbing. There's also whitewater rafting in the Deschutes River. So a lot of opportunities to get involved outdoors. But I promise you don't have to be an outdoorsy student if you want to go to Cascades. A lot of different options. Some of the special programs that they offer at Cascades that are not on the main campus are energy systems engineering, hospitality management, tourism, recreation, and adventure leadership. And then they also have a general engineering major. So if you don't know what type of engineering you want to go into, you can actually graduate with engineering as your major from Cascades. Cascades will have the same application deadlines as Oregon State. Our admissions office does function as a whole with our systems. So not really any differences there. But again, if you have questions about that, I can answer those. For Portland State University, this is another one of our larger campuses, but right in the middle of downtown Portland. So if you like being in the city, you want to be a little bit closer to home, this is going to be a really great option for you. I am also a Portland State alumna. I completed my master's there, so I was on campus. I had a little bit of a different experience than what a traditional first-year student would have. But like I said, a little bit larger, so they are going to have a lot of program options. Management and leadership are some of their really great programs that they offer, as well as film, some engineering programs as well, and a strong social work program. Again, application deadlines similar to Oregon State, and then also similar to U of O, which we will get to. Southern Oregon University is next. Back to some of our smaller campuses located down in Ashland, where we have our Shakespeare Festival in the state of Oregon. So if you do like arts, you like theater, this could be a great fit for you. Around 6,000 students on their campus. Even though they have a very strong theater and arts program, you don't have to be interested in that major to go to Southern Oregon. They also have their criminal justice program. They even have a biology program. So all sorts of options depending on what you're interested in. Southern Oregon University is also ranked within the top 25 schools in the nation for LGBTQ plus friendly universities. So that's one of their really big pride points. I know Portland State is up within the top 50 as well. So Oregon really is within the top for some of those programs. All right, University of Oregon is next. They are still a great school, even though I work for Oregon State. I promise it is a good fit for students as well. Another one of our larger schools within the state. They have a really great architecture program as well as journalism. They do have engineering programs as well, but they have a very, very good law school for the graduate level. So if you are interested in being a lawyer, then I do recommend looking into University of Oregon. Again, south of Corvallis, not really a big city, but a little bit more so than you're going to find at Oregon State and some of the other campuses that I've talked about previously. Last university I'm going to mention, and then we will get to a couple of questions. Monmouth is where Western Oregon is located. Monmouth is actually one of the top 5 safest cities in the United States. So that being said, Western Oregon is a very safe campus. In terms of some important majors that they like to talk about, criminal justice. I know someone who also graduated from their dance program, so there is a wide variety. Western Oregon is also on their way to being a Hispanic serving institution, so a lot of diversity in terms of their programs as well as their student body, and again, a smaller campus than some of our other ones. I think we have a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to take a quick pause again before we dive into those, and I'll give Sarah the mic to start us off.
And sorry if I can interrupt for just a second. For our interpreters who are here, you have to have your mute off in order for people to hear you. It won't interrupt us. If you could unmute yourself, then the people listening to you are able to hear you. So that's our Arabic interpreter and our Somali interpreter. Our Chinese interpreter. If you could unmute yourself, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Tracy. So we have an OSU specific question is, if you get an acceptance letter from OSU for early action, how late can you accept it?
That is a great question. So if students receive an acceptance letter from Oregon State for early action, generally students will receive that letter mid-December, so latest by December 15th. And then you have all the way until May 1st to let us know if you are planning to attend Oregon State. May 1st is the national commitment deadline. So for most universities, that is when you are going to have to let us know that you plan to attend. So you have all the way until May 1st, but if you know that you're interested in going to Oregon State before then, let us know, commit. You'll submit an advanced tuition deposit, just letting us know that you're planning on attending. And then you can also fill out housing and just really start that process of becoming a student at Oregon State.
There's a question about 4 years free for PSU, so I'll go ahead and address that one in the chat. And then you may get to this, so if you may want to address this now or hold on to it, but are individual poor grades a problem if overall GPA is good?
Yes, so I will talk about GPA and grades in the next section.
講下嗰個成績分數。
Just a comment about a program that U of O has. They do have a big music program. I definitely today do not
有音樂嘅一個計劃嘅。
all of the programs. So if you are interested in a specific one, or you want to know if a school has a certain program, you can find a list of academic programs just to see what they have. I know for Oregon State, because that's where I work, that's the school I'm on. We have a tool that's called Find Your Major. And so you can filter So there are a lot of different opportunities to help narrow down our major programs. And so some schools might have that same option, some might not, but you can definitely find a list of everything that each school has to offer on their individual websites. And then, Sarah, do you want to mention if PSU has early acceptance?
Yes, I was just addressing that. So PSU does not have early admissions. Their deadline is going to be February 1st, and they accept applications on a rolling basis. So February 1st will help get you more qualified for scholarships. Their scholarship application is that time, but they don't have an early one as some other Oregon schools do. And
then one last question that I see right now. Are there specific scholarships that are tied to early admission? I'm not sure about every university. For Oregon State, our admissions-based scholarships does not matter if you apply for the early deadline or if you apply for our priority deadline. For us, if you apply at least by our priority one, you are automatically eligible for those. But we do have some additional scholarships that if students apply earlier, know they're admitted, they can apply for those and get a jump start on those applications. So there may be other scholarships where the deadlines are a little bit earlier than others, but in terms of our admissions ones, again, this is only for Oregon State. There's not a difference on what deadline students apply by.
And then we've had an Oregon Promise question come in, and I'll go ahead and address that one through the chat if you want to keep on moving forward.
Yeah, I will definitely jump into the next slide. Let me get my stuff back. Here we go. So next is going to be just a general overview of admissions. Again, I just really want to stress and clarify that these admissions requirements will vary depending on each school. So if I'm saying something today, it is probably an overview of most of the public universities, but some of them do differ. So if you have questions, please contact the appropriate university admissions officer. And if you have any questions or you don't know who to contact, my email will be at the very end, so I can also help direct you to the right person. But just make sure you're double checking with the admissions office as I go through all of these. I will be going over just the holistic review process, what that means, what the college courses we look for are, test scores, what does test optional mean, essays and some additional statements that you can submit, documents that you need, as well as what do you do when it's time to apply. So we will dive in. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so holistic review. This has a lot of different factors, and what this means is that we are looking at an overall application. So it's not one thing is going to be weighed more than the other. We take into account a lot of different factors when it comes to a student. So we'll look at GPA, is it unweighted, weighted? What kinds of courses students have taken? Are they honors, AP, or IB courses? That GPA, again, like I mentioned, usually universities like to see it at about a minimum of a 3.0 unweighted GPA. But if a student has below that, it doesn't mean that they can't be admitted. And again, some of our universities within the state of Oregon will actually admit students at a lower GPA than that as well. We'll also look at some grade trends. So maybe the introduction to your first year of high school was a little hard, but you've gotten better grades since. We will take note of that. Additionally, we'll look at test scores if they are required. Some universities require them and some don't. And then there are other essay options. So depending on what essay schools require, they'll usually take those into account in the types of answers and what really makes a student stand out. In addition to that, schools want to see that you have the right classes and that you're passing those. So these college prep courses is what Oregon State calls them. What we look for are passing grades of a C- or above in 4 years of English, 3 of math, and we have to see culminating at Algebra 2 or higher. So we have to see that Algebra 2 on your transcripts. 3 years of science, 3 years of social studies, and 2 years of the same second language. So again, for us at Oregon State, that's the same language. We do have some other options. If you are proficient in a language already, we can work with that. And for us, students can be admitted without that language and we'll just complete it before they graduate. Oh, didn't mean to click on that yet. Sorry, going back. Last thing I want to mention, due to COVID in the spring, if your school, which I think most of them did, it changed to a pass or no pass system, we will accept passing grades on your transcript. So If it has a P on there, that's really what we want to see. So don't stress about that if that's a decision that your school made. All right, moving on to test scores and test optional. So some schools will require either an SAT or an ACT for admissions and scholarships. If you are submitting those, some schools will allow you to self-report your scores on your application. So what that means is you'll list the day you took the test, what test it was, and what your scores were for each section. If they allow that, you still need to be prepared to submit your official scores, and you will send those from the testing agency. So for SAT, that's going to be collegeboard.org. That's where you will also request your AP scores. And for ACT, act.org. So that one's really easy to remember. Oregon State, we are test optional this year forever forward. So what that means for us is that we no longer require an ACT or an SAT score, and that's for admissions or admissions-based scholarships. So we don't need those test scores. Students can still submit them if they want to, if they think it will help their application, but we do not require them, and it will not hurt a student if they do not submit them. Additionally, something to keep in mind with this test optional policy is some schools may have changed to test optional due to COVID and may be changing back in the future to requiring SAT or ACT scores. So just make sure you're double checking on the admissions website, reading through, asking the admissions officers if they will go back to requiring tests, just to make sure that you are taking them when they are available, since they are not right now, just to make sure that you have everything that you need in order to apply. In terms of essays and additional statements, essays are often required because they're a great way to tell us about who you are as a person past what we see on your transcript. So this is a really great way to show us what makes you unique, and really who you are. Do you have leadership experience? Have you done community service? Is there a challenge that you've overcome and you had to work really hard to do so? And, you know, maybe that's affected your schoolwork. So really use that essay to write about who you are, make it personal. That's really what we want to see. My biggest piece of advice for you all is to remember to read the prompt and to answer it. I would say that's often what we see on essays, is that students are not answering every part of the question. So just make sure that you're doing that. And as long as you answer every part to the best of your ability, you'll probably be okay. The Common App, which I'll talk about on the next slide, but they do have a lot of different essay prompts that you can choose to answer. You'll choose one out of the list. And some schools will accept those, some will not, but they have a lot of different options. And if you're trying to figure out how to apply for scholarships even, or a different university, those prompts are always a great way to start thinking about different topics of what you will be able to write about for some of those essays. Additionally, some universities or maybe programs within universities may have supplemental essays. So again, just be double checking what is required for each admissions office so that you know that you have everything answered that you need to. For Oregon State, we do, and on the Common App, there is options for a personal and COVID statement or statement. They are optional. Students do not have to submit them, but obviously, COVID has affected everybody. That's why we're kind of like this today in this virtual YouTube, Zoom realm. But maybe it really affected your family. There was a loss. Your parents lost their jobs, and it's really affected you. You can write about it there, but it also doesn't have to be COVID based. So that personal statement could be a great way to talk about something else. Maybe there's something that happened your freshman year, and that's why your GPA is a little bit lower that semester. You know, tell us about it. We want to know who students are, what they've been through. We want to know more besides just these numbers and letters that we see on a transcript. So that's why those personal and COVID statements are there. Again, they're optional and students will not be penalized if they don't submit them. It just is another opportunity that students have in order to just really explain what they want to, since everything is happening virtually and most public universities don't offer any sort of interview process like private universities may. Okay.
We've had a couple of questions.
Absolutely, let's go for
around
it.
Testing. So let's take a look at those. So a couple admissions things. Do schools care if students take more than the necessary amount of courses? For example, if I took 3 years of Spanish, would that help?
That's a very good question. Students are more than welcome to take more. We will obviously be looking at the grades in those classes and your GPA, but you don't have to take more than what we request. But again, those requirements might change. I know just since I used to work there, Oregon Tech does not require a second language. So for them, you wouldn't have to take any, but for Oregon State, all we require is 2 years. If you take 3, that's great. We'll just be looking at those grades, but it doesn't necessarily give you a step up if you've taken more.
A couple about test scores. If your child selected to automatically send ACT scores, but they weren't the best, will a school still look at them if you selected not to have your scores considered in the application?
That is a great question. If a student selected, no, I don't want my test scores used in the admissions process, we will not look at them. But that being said, if a student still decided to submit their test scores and they're lower, students won't be penalized for that since we don't require them. So we really want to make sure that your application is as strong as it can be, and that's what we're looking for. So if your test scores are lower and really not a reflection of your academic ability, we won't take them into consideration. We're not looking to dock points. We're really looking to give students points. There's not really a points basis, but we're just looking to help you out. So what we want is going to really be who you are. You know, we don't want to penalize you, so we won't worry about those lower test scores. I hope that answered that question.
If a school goes back to requiring tests, will that affect a student while they're in college?
No. So that's a good question. It shouldn't. So if you're a senior right now and the school is test optional and you are admitted without an SAT or ACT score, it should not disadvantage you later if they go back because you're already through that admissions process. It's really only important to pay attention if you are a junior or, even younger if you're here, that's awesome. But, once you have been admitted and started at a university, your SAT and ACT scores really aren't needed. So it should not penalize you if the school makes that change back.
And then this one's about essays, optional essays. While every school says optional, realistically, is there a penalty for not answering? Or is it an opportunity to clarify outliers on admission?
Great question. Wow, these are awesome. It's an opportunity. So they're optional. It's really not a trick, and I can promise that if you don't submit it, it's not going to harm your application or hurt you. Again, like you said in the question, it's really just an opportunity to explain anything else that you want to.
And then do schools take into account private language schools that are outside of the Oregon school system? And if so, where would you put this on your application?
Yeah, great question. So you would just be able to list an additional school and search for that school. It's absolutely okay if it's outside of the Oregon system. And that is something similar to if students are doing dual credit courses. So maybe you're taking courses through PCC or Clackamas Community College, or Oregon Tech even, they have a lot of dual credit courses. You would just list that school on your application as well. So you would just list it. It's totally okay if it's outside of Oregon. The schools will look for those. But if you've gotten credit from any school, it should be listed on your application.
And then this is a big question, and
Okay.
may not be something that you are able to answer. Are public universities having in-person learning? And what does that look like in the future?
Yeah, that's a big question. So every university is doing it differently. Right now, there's no rule book to how to handle a global pandemic. So every university is doing it differently. Some are doing like a hybrid model where some classes are in person, some are virtual. I know some universities are giving students options to decide if they're on campus or not on campus. I'm sure you've seen on the news, some schools have started and then students have gone home. So it is a really big question, and I don't have an answer of what that looks like or what that's going to look like in the future. I really wish I could tell you what next fall will look like, but honestly, no one has any idea right now. For Oregon State, we've announced our plans for winter term, which runs from January to the end of March, but we have not yet announced what we are doing for spring term. So we still don't know what our plan is for April, but everyone's trying to figure it out as soon as we can. Just when the information changes daily, you have no idea.
All right, I think we've addressed all of the questions currently in the chat, so we'll come back to it after your next section.
I actually have a couple that are in the Zoom chat.
Oh, great, yeah.
Yeah, so I am going to answer that. If I'm in early college working on the prerequisites for nursing, can I apply now to any university that has a nursing school? That's a really great question. Nursing is a kind of complicated program to get into because it does vary from school to school. Oregon State, for example, we have a pre-nursing program. So students will pick their major, like biology, for example, and add a focus area for pre-nursing. So they won't graduate with their nursing degree. They'll then have to go to nursing school afterwards. However, there are 3 universities in the state, public universities, so that's Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon, as well as Oregon Tech, that partner with OHSU. So students can complete their prerequisites at one of those 3 universities, and then if they are admitted into the OHSU program, can finish out that program at the respective college campuses. So again, students can get their OHSU nursing school degree from either Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon, or Oregon Tech. So if you are working on some prerequisites for nursing, those could potentially transfer into those programs, but there are still some other prerequisites that you would probably have to complete before fully being admitted into a nursing program. And then one more in the Zoom chat. At OSU, there are some scholarships that have a certain GPA or test score cutoffs. If you met the test score cutoff but not the GPA cutoff, can you still get those scholarships now that OSU is test optional? It's a big question again. So all of Oregon State's admissions-based scholarships, so through our Office of Admissions and our Office of Scholarships, we don't require test scores anymore. So that will be a holistic review approach. So just like for admissions, our scholarship office will review those essays and the transcripts to then decide how much a student will be awarded for scholarships. So Oregon State no longer has like a table that says, I have a 3.5, I will get X amount in scholarship money. That has changed. So I hope that helped. Okay. Sarah, any more questions, or can I do this last slide and then move on to my questions slide?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, and then we can address some of the other questions.
Okay, great. I mean, they're coming in. I just want to make sure that I have a chance to explain this, and then we can finish up. So
Great.
Real quick, just finishing up in terms of documents, just make sure you have your high school transcripts in through the Common App. And I know the Oregon State application, you do have the option to upload your transcripts. Eventually, we will need official high school transcripts. Those will be your final high school transcripts once you've graduated from your counselor. Dual credit transcripts. So if you've taken courses through Portland Community College, we don't necessarily need those for admissions because a lot of your grades will be on your high school transcripts. But if you want to get that college course, get that transferred in, get credit for it, then we will need those transcripts and that evaluation done. If you are submitting your test scores, like I mentioned, we need official ones in addition to the self-report. So you can self-report your scores at first, but we will need official scores eventually. And again, that's from either College Board or ACT. Make sure you have your essays, everything submitted. For some students, we do have the tuition equity form. So if you are undocumented or documented, you can still have the ability to receive in-state tuition. So make sure if you have questions about that, please get in contact with the admissions office so we can connect you to the right forms to fill out to make sure you get everything in that you need to. And like I mentioned earlier with the high school transcripts, we just need those final ones, official copy of the final ones from your high school counselor. When it comes time to apply, there are application options like I've kind of hinted at. Usually a good starting point is the university's application. So that will be through the admissions website. There are, I believe, 11 schools in Oregon that accept the common application. I know Oregon State and U of O are two of the schools that do. So if you are applying to multiple schools that accept the Common App, just fill out the Common App for those schools. But if Oregon State is the only one you're applying to that does accept the Common Application, then just make sure you're applying through our application. There's no need to submit that Common App. Make sure you're double checking your deadlines. They are all different all over the place. It's really easy to just stay organized, write down the schools you're applying to, write down what those deadlines are, what's required. You need to make sure that you have all of your documentation in before the deadline. So that's really important to remember, especially for these early action deadlines. At least for Oregon State, those are non-binding, but if you have your application in and you do not have your transcripts in, then your application will not be complete and will not be reviewed for the early deadline. So just make sure you have everything in that you need to on time, and make sure you're writing down your login information or have it saved somewhere or remember it, because your portals are going to be your best way to check your application status, as well as eventually confirm your attendance and find the contact information that you need and work through those next steps. So make sure as soon as you create your account for a university, for the Common App, that you're able to log back in, because that's where you will be able to check your status. So moving on to my final slide, which is questions. I have my email on the slide. So if you have more questions about Oregon State, please reach out to me. It is my job to help you. And then if you did not fill out that link at the very beginning and you are interested in Oregon State, I've put it on the slide as well. Just let us know you were here. If you're not interested in Oregon State, again, it's okay. You don't have to fill it out. So Sarah, what kinds of questions do we have?
Yes. Are OSU and OSU Cascade the same school number for FAFSA?
That's a really good question. I believe so, because everything works out of our same offices, but I will honestly have to check that. I want to say yes, but I'm not entirely positive. What you can do is, if you want to double check, you can go to the school's financial aid website and they will have that number listed. So just make sure you're double checking all of those, but that's a great question. I wish I 100% knew.
A math question. If a student took Algebra 2 as an 8th grader and has a transcript grade from the high school, can they include that in their college application?
Yes. And sometimes you might want to check with your counselor. Sometimes if you've taken courses in middle school that normally would count in high school, those will also be on your transcript. Not all the time, but sometimes. So sometimes we can see, oh, this student took math or started Spanish early, and those will be on the transcript, but double check with your counselor. If not, just make sure you're listing it in your application. And if a school needs more documentation, they will let you know.
If we're accepted to school and then decide to take a gap year, can you defer enrollment or would you need to reapply?
So most schools will allow you to defer to a different term, but if it is an entire academic year, then you would need to reapply. Again, I can't stress this enough. Get in contact with the admissions advisors at each school. They really will be able to help you out through the process, but general rule of thumb, you can defer to a different start term and you will need to reapply after a full year.
And I'll jump in and say Portland State does offer a gap year. You do have to commit to attending. So you submit your enrollment deposit, which I believe is about $350. So that's an option at PSU, but it does vary school to school.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
If OSU does not care about test scores, then how do they decide which students can be accepted? Applications, scholarship, etc.
Yeah, so that goes back to that holistic approach. So we will be looking at unweighted GPA, making sure that we see passing grades in all of those courses that I mentioned earlier, the appropriate English, math, science, social studies, second language. We're also looking at what activities you list on your application, as well as your essay. So are you answering the essay prompt? Just making sure that all of that is together. It will be holistic. So normally we look for an unweighted 3.0 GPA. That's not to say if you don't have a 3 you cannot be admitted based on other aspects of your application, but we just don't require the test scores anymore. So we look at everything, absolutely everything when it comes to your transcripts and application as a whole.
What is the benefit of early admission?
Yeah, and so those benefits are going to change from school to school. Especially if a school has rolling admissions, that's going to look a little differently. But for Oregon State, what I can say is our students that are applying by November 2nd this year is our early action deadline. The housing application opens February 1st. So students that know they are admitted by mid-December can start filling that out as soon as it's open. Additionally, we have what's called Scholar Dollars. So that's one application for scholarships to a bunch of other Oregon State departments. And that is available starting November 1st for students, and students have to be admitted. So as soon as you know you're admitted, you can start filling that out. Those scholarships all have different deadlines. So to optimize students' opportunity for those scholarships, we do recommend applying early, but that doesn't mean that students can't get scholarships through Scholar Dollars if they apply by our February 1st deadline. So that's how it works for Oregon State. Those are a couple of the perks to applying early, but that could differ depending on what school you're looking at.
How different is the admissions process when you are transferring from a 2-year community college?
That's a great question as well. So for students that are transferring from a community college, you will be considered a transfer student if you have at least 36 quarter or 24 semester credit hours. And so when you apply, the applications generally, at least for Oregon State, are similar. All we require are going to be your college transcripts from every college you've attended. We will look for a cumulative unweighted or cumulative GPA of a 2.25 and then passing grades in really the first year writing class, which is writing 121, and then college algebra, which is math 111. So the admissions requirements are a little different, but the application and the essays are still there. So transfer students are, at least for Oregon State, still evaluated on their application as a whole.
What advice do you have for students trying to apply into the OSU Honors College? And I would pose that as just Honors College more broadly.
Yeah, so what I can kind of say about the Honors College is, first, just a reminder, it is a separate review process. So if you are applying to Oregon State's Honors College, you will receive 2 decisions. You will get your Oregon State decision first, and then the Honors College decision second. They do have additional essay questions. So again, my biggest piece of advice is just to make sure you're answering the prompt, answer every part to the prompt, and just really write about what you are passionate about. And I think that's really a piece of advice for all essays that you're writing is, make sure it's something that you truly believe in, and don't write what you think we want to hear, because chances are that's not actually what we want to be reading. So just make sure you're answering every part and proofread. Make sure you are proofreading your essay responses. I know students are applying to multiple schools, and students do it, and even teachers in letters of recommendation. I read one that was addressed to BYU this year, so make sure you're proofreading everything. It doesn't hurt to go over it multiple times with multiple sets of eyes on it.
So this question is, how does dual credit transfers work? Do you need to submit it by the application deadline? I'm thinking that's related to the college transcript with the dual credits detailed on it. So do you need to submit those by the application deadline as well?
So for Oregon State, we do not need the dual credit, like the college transcripts for admissions. We can see those grades on your high school transcripts. But if students want to get credit for the college courses they have taken, then we will need the transcripts in order to get you that credit. So we would need the transcripts eventually, but we don't really need them by the admissions deadline. So yes and no. We need them if you need credit. You might as well get them in as soon as you can so you don't have to worry about it. But for our admissions, we just use your high school transcripts.
Is an ACT score of 24 good?
So it's sometimes hard to decide what good is, and that's going to change depending on the university as well as scholarships that you're looking at. I would say for Oregon State, our ACT average is around a 26, maybe a 28. But it's good is really relative. And so just make sure you're looking at what some of those averages are, and that might give you a better idea on if you're close to the mark or if not. I also recommend trying to find any sort of free resource online to do some test prep. I know Khan Academy has really great resources that are free. And honestly, another piece of advice, Khan Academy is a great resource overall if you've never used it. I was actually a science major in my undergrad, and that is the only way I made it through college. So shout out to Khan Academy.
Since you are supposed to submit your official transcript from your high school, do you need to fill out the class grade information via Common App?
Yes. Yep, just yes. You do. You should.
Does OSU offer music scholarships to non-music majors or non-music minors?
So I'm not entirely sure about what scholarships are through our music program, but what I will say is that we don't have any restriction to any of our extracurricular music opportunities. So you don't have to be a music major or minor to be in any of the choirs or bands or theater programs, but I just don't know what their scholarships through their program look like. Generally, scholarships that are by program are for students that are studying within that college. So that is something to be aware of.
Does applying early affect your application to other schools?
Depends. So that is another good question. We are getting really good ones tonight. So there are 2 different phrases that you will generally hear. You will hear early action and early decision. Early action is non-binding. So that's what Oregon State is. It doesn't mean that you're committing to the university early, you just have an earlier decision. Early decision is really common among private universities, and so those are the binding decisions. You can only apply to one early decision university because if you are admitted, it is an agreement that you will attend that university. So if you absolutely know that if you are admitted into a certain school and you will go there and they are early decision, that would be a great opportunity to apply for that deadline. But for Oregon State, early action, it's non-binding, so you don't have to worry about, applying early to multiple universities. You can do that with early action. I hope that was a good description. Sarah, do you want to add to that?
No, that was exactly what I would say as well.
Okay.
What are the GPA requirements for admission to OSU, U of O, and PSU?
Yeah, so I can speak on OSU and Sarah can speak on PSU, but for OSU, we don't have a hard GPA requirement. Generally, we look for at least an unweighted 3-point GPA, so that's on a 4-point scale. Doesn't guarantee you admissions if you have above a 3-point, and it's not an automatic denial if you have below. That's just kind of a range that we look for. I can't speak on University of Oregon. I don't actually know off the top of my head. Sarah, you might, but you share about PSU.
Yeah, U of O kind of follows a similar application process to Oregon State. PSU is a little bit different in that it's a 3.0 GPA requirement. C's are better in English, science, social studies, math, and foreign language. And if you meet those requirements, you're automatically admitted. I'm going to jump down a question because it related to a question you just answered a minute ago. What are the consequences of declining an early decision?
Ooh, that's a good question. If you decline an early decision, generally, at least for Oregon State, if you change your mind, there are ways to, readjust and maybe reopen applications. But I would recommend, if you are concerned that you're going to change your mind, just wait. Students have all the way until May 1st to commit to a university, and often you can actually apply for housing before that. So, if you are still trying to make up your mind, you don't really know where you want to go, don't feel rushed to put in that decision. So if you're applying early action, again, it's probably not a huge deal. Early decision, I've actually never worked for a university that has early decision, so I do not know what that process looks like, since that is a commitment to attend that university once you're admitted. So I wish I could answer that, but they might be able to answer that in the private university presentation that I think is happening tomorrow, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
so
exactly.
Tomorrow, and they should be able to answer that for you.
With so many people taking gap years due to COVID, will this year's students have a higher standard for admission and/or scholarships?
No, no, we are not going to make it harder for students due to a global pandemic. Our requirements are going to stay the same. There's nothing harder about being admitted. So no, there's no difference.
And then, given there are athletic scholarships for football, are there scholarships for marching band? So this was going back to the music scholarship question a few questions ago.
I do not believe there are. Marching band is open to anybody, so you don't even have to have previous marching band experience. So it's more of like an organization to be involved in. So I do not believe that there are marching band scholarships.
And then I believe the answer to this is no, but I'm just going to check with you, Corey. Can you take the ACT test online?
I also believe the answer is no. Yeah, right now I don't think there is any sort of ACT or SAT testing that's going on. So.
And then what was the GPA requirement for OSU Honors if it's a specific requirement?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Our honors college does require a minimum of a 3.75 GPA. And again, that's unweighted, so on that 4-point scale.
If your FAFSA results are not reflective of your current situation, what is the process to reach out to school to clarify your current reality?
Do you want to touch on that one, Sarah?
I would say reach out and talk with financial aid to be able to explain circumstances. Different financial aid offices will have different processes. Some schools may be better able to make some revisions to your award letter. Some schools may not have the financial bandwidth to make those changes, but it's definitely worth reaching out to the financial aid office and asking the question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
All right. If you fail a class, will that make it virtually impossible to get admitted?
Okay. That will depend on the class that it is, to be honest. If you are concerned about your GPA or anything on your transcript, please email your admissions officer at whatever schools you're applying to. Get in contact with them. I know for us at Oregon State, we work with our students and we do have opportunities to vouch for students if we think that they can be successful. So, but we can't do that if we don't know that you're out there. So if you're concerned about it, get in touch. You know, obviously that's going to affect your GPA and pull that down. But if it's in band, you know, maybe you missed a bit, or, you know, like if it's in an elective, it's not as big of a deal. If it's in an English class, then you definitely should look at retaking that course and getting a different grade on your transcript. So kind of an it depends answer, but get in contact with the appropriate person at the college or the admissions office and they'll connect you to your advisor.
At Oregon State, within the different schools or colleges, are there different requirements like the School of Business or School of Engineering?
So students will apply to Oregon State as a whole and just declare what major you're interested in studying. We don't have any different admissions requirements. The only program that has kind of a checkpoint is our College of Engineering. So students will have they'll have check-ins with their advisor their first couple of years, and they do have a an Oregon State GPA requirement in order to move on into the junior year and like professional level courses for engineering. Like I said, it's more of a checkpoint. So it's just making sure that students are passing their classes and they're ready to move on. And if students are struggling, then the advisors are there to help you before you get to that point. So most students are able to continue on into engineering, but starting your first year, there aren't any other differences in GPA. So it's just Oregon State's application, you're declaring your major and you'll be admitted into that program.
Well, Corey, I think we have come to the end of our questions. So I'll give you all just another minute if you want to pose some questions, but just a couple reminders that we have more presentations coming up. So tomorrow during the day, there will be an art school portfolio presentation, as well as writing college essays. And then in the evening, it will be private school admissions. And then on Thursday, we will have a presentation about community colleges and Oregon Promise. And so we hope you'll be able to join us in those presentations as well. And I see we've had another question pop up, so we'll address that. Will tuition be lowered for online courses due to COVID, or will it continue to increase next year?
I wish I had an answer for this question, but I just don't know. And I think, especially because no one knows what next year is going to look like, there really isn't an answer. Like I said, I wish I had one for you, but I just don't know at this point.
With that, I think we will go ahead and conclude things. Corey, thank you so much for providing all of this information and for being such a great resource. And really thank you to all of you who took the time out this evening to attend this presentation. We hope you found it valuable and informative. And any additional questions, please follow up with your school counselors. Speaking as a counselor myself, I know we're very happy to go over any of this with you to help make this process as understandable and as enjoyable as possible. So many thanks to you all, and I wish you all a great evening. Take care.